On April 11, 1968, the Fair Housing Act was enacted into law, recognizing that property rights should not be abridged because of discrimination based on race, color, national origin, or religion.
When the Fair Housing Act was voted on and passed in 1968, it was a landmark piece of legislation. Why? People had been trying for a long time before that, and it was in and out of committee. It was very contentious. It was the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King a week before the bill passed that really provided the impetus to do it, because all of a sudden a lot of people who were in opposition began to recognize, you know, this is a real problem. Maybe I didn't think it was a problem because it wasn't affecting me, but it really is affecting me, because if we're unfair to anybody, ultimately we're unfair to everybody.
I certainly think everyone should be entitled to a decent place to live. But that is not the way things work yet.
It's a goal that many of the families have, to move out of substandard housing so that they could get into something that's not in poverty and in despair.
What really concerns me is the cost of housing. There are people who can't ever afford a place to live.
God is no stranger to the troubles of the poor. God always stands with the poor in their struggles. In our short stay here on earth, where do we stand? What is it we are really trying to build? Not even God was spared the perils of homelessness. In the Old Testament, we see King David embarrassed to live in better quarters than the God he knew as King of Kings. David was living in a palace while he knew his God resided in a mere tent. And we know the story in the New Testament of Mary and Joseph finding no room anywhere for their baby to be born. Instead, they were content to have shelter in a stable with an empty manger as a crib for their newborn infant. Today, we live in one of the richest countries ever known. As a relatively young nation of just over 200 years of history, the United States has made remarkable growth and development in many areas, such as science, communication, transportation, and medicine. Our motto might be, if we can imagine it, we can do it. However, despite all these wonderful advancements, there is astonishingly much that is lacking. Recognizing the great disparity between the lives of the rich and the poor in our society, the United States Catholic bishops have written a pastoral letter on social justice and economics. If it is true that a chain is as strong as its weakest link, then it seems the bishops are saying we have some weak links to strengthen to be deemed a great nation in the annals of history.
The challenge of this pastoral letter is not merely to think differently, but also to act differently. A renewal of economic life depends on the conscious choices and commitments of individual believers who practice their faith in the world. This letter calls us to conversion and common action, to new forms of stewardship, service, and citizenship. The completion of a letter such as this is but the beginning of a long process of education, discussion, and action.
One of the issues calling for our attention and challenging us as a nation is fair and affordable housing for all our citizens. To help deepen our understanding of this issue and its challenges, we would like to introduce to you Janet Becker. In the political arena, Janet serves as a voice for the poor and an advocate for fair housing.
I was about 16 years old. I discovered that there was a program in Philadelphia where I grew up. It was a weekend program, and the idea was fixing up, making little repairs or beautifying homes in the neighborhood. And that was every Saturday afternoon, and it gave me a chance to see how other people live and just get to know them a little bit. It was very interesting to me and rewarding. That was really what started me off. But the other thing was that about the same time, I had a real concern about racism, and that was part of it, because housing is not equal.
In the sale and rental of housing, no one may discriminate against you based on your race, color, religion, national origin, sex, family status, or disability. It is against the law to make housing unavailable, refuse to negotiate for housing, refuse to rent or sell houses, deny you of a dwelling, set different terms, conditions, or privileges for sale or rental, provide different housing services than what was offered to someone else, falsely deny that housing is available for inspection, rent, or sale, persuade owners to rent or sell for profit, or deny access to or membership in a facility or service related to housing.
The measure of our economy is not only what it produces, but also how it touches human life, whether it protects or undermines the dignity of the human person, and how it promotes the common good.
When we came here to St. Louis, there was a wonderful fair housing organization. Freedom of Residence was its name, and it was headed by Ruth Porter, whose painting, well, a painting of Ruth Porter, was on the Ruth Porter Mall. It's on Delmar and de Bolivar. She was an amazing, wonderful person who died too young. She was kind of a mentor for me. And we used to go out and test places, you know, about how much does this cost, or are you willing to rent and all that. And the blacks and the whites, and see what the discrimination was.
I don't believe there's a middle class at all. You're either rich or you're poor, and just the average pay. I mean, my husband and I, like I said, make good money. We live paycheck to paycheck.
Millions of Americans live on the edge of homelessness. One missed paycheck, one major illness, or one large repair bill may be all that it takes for individuals or families to see their lives suddenly and drastically change because of the loss of a place to call home.
At one time, my husband had a heart attack and he was out of work, and we was 3 or 4 payments behind at the time. And we looked all over for help. We got help paying a few gas bills, electric bill, but there was nobody there to help us pay our house payment.
There are people who can't ever afford a place to live.
I see more and more people families moving in together. You hear of fires all the time. You hear of, 10, 15 people living in one house. And that's why, because they can't afford to rent. They can't afford to buy, so they all move in together. They share the bills.
Your life is so disrupted if you're homeless. You double up with family, you double up with friends. Maybe not friends, but just people, anybody. You've got to find a place to live. And after a while, they say, we can't take this anymore. It's too stressful. And then you go somewhere else. And the last resort is you have to go to a shelter. And that's no fun.
It remains clear that the moral test of our society is how the poor, the weak, and the vulnerable are faring. And by this standard, we are falling far short.
There is a real crisis nationwide for housing, affordable housing. Now, this is a very peculiar term, but we all live in affordable housing, because if it wasn't affordable, we wouldn't be living in it. So it's meaningless. We live where we can, and the lucky ones live where they want.
We're all entitled to a place to live, but we can't all afford places to live. You know, there's a lot of single parents trying to raise kids, and they just can't afford the rent.
What is the fair market rent for a one-bedroom, a two-bedroom in a particular area? There's a wonderful woman, Cushing Dolbear. She works on these issues and studies them in Washington. And she does this all across the country. She has every city, every state, how much is it, and then what is what's called the area median income. Well, all of those are different. Unfortunately, they glomp together St. Louis City and St. Louis County, which are quite different in terms of income and, in fact, in terms of rent. And it keeps going up. But it's the best we have. Now, in the St. Louis area, the area median income for a family of 4, it's always based on that, $61,400 a year. Okay. Now, there are different groups. If the lowest category that refers to income is extremely low income, ELI, extremely low income, would be 30% of median. Now, the median is halfway. If you have a long list of everybody's income in St. Louis, where is the middle, where it's as many down here as it is up here? That's what median means. It's not average, but it's median. Okay, because the area median income is $61,400, 30% of that is $18,420. Now, that's a lot higher than it used to be, but the area income is higher. It's probably going to be lower next year, I hope. Okay, now what is the fair market rent in this area for a 2-bedroom apartment? $655. Okay, what does it cost to afford a 2-bedroom? $26,200 to pay that rent. What is the hourly wage needed for that 2-bedroom? $12.60 an hour. How many hours would it take to work on minimum wage, full-time? 98 hours a week to support a 2-bedroom apartment in this area. So you can see there are a lot of folks who aren't anywhere near that. And that's the thing that bothers me so much, because minimum wage, That's nice for young kids and their training and their, starting out. They're not responsible for supporting a family or even an individual, hopefully, themselves. But minimum wage is so low that it's meaningless. And I think it will be raised a little bit, but never enough. And if you don't get a living wage, which means one that you can live with for your family, then you're just out of luck in this country. You're not entitled. You just do your best and find a place that you can get. And homelessness is on the rise everywhere. It is a real crisis, but there are solutions. We just have to work on them and fight for them.
When the structures are inadequate or unjust to certain individuals or groups in society, charity or donations, large or small, cannot be substituted for basic social justice.
Today's good news focuses on a group out of Habitat for Humanity known as Women's Build, which has found a way to provide affordable housing for low-income families.
I see how grateful everyone is and how willing they are to give their time and effort without getting anything in return.
Why I do this? Because I feel the need is so great. There are so many people that need a place to live. And we live in one of the richest countries in the world, but it's so many people who are homeless. And this is why I do it. I don't think we just go out and build homes because they look good or to make the community look good, but we do it because the need is so great.
Women's Build is unique to Habitat for Humanity because it is a highly collaborative effort initiated by a group of women religious in the St. Louis area. Sister Katherine Dunn will share from her knowledge and experience as a supporter of Women's Build.
In 1996, Sister Kathy Vetter, an Incarnate Word sister from the Archdiocesan office, sent a letter to the religious communities in St. Louis asking us to be a part of a project that was Habitat for Humanity Women's Build. Various communities that could responded and sent a representative to be on what they called a steering committee. Other communities responded with sending money, and other communities responded by saying they would pray for the project. One hope was that we would be able to build decent and affordable housing for the families that would be affordable for them to be buying at cost. And this would be over a 20-year period they would have to pay for their house. Primarily the group that's helped would be low-income people, people that are hard workers, steady workers, with some kind of background that will guarantee that they'll always be able to find a job or hold a job. The actual build begins with what they call a blitz, and that means Habitat has completed laying the foundation. Then we would have one complete week of working every day and see how much can be accomplished. On those days, we need volunteers. People that are building the house are volunteers and may not have any knowledge of how to build, but we also have skilled laborers who are doing much of the measuring and much of the skilled work that needs to be done. And they build as fast as they can on that whole week. Then on the Saturdays we pick up, after that blitz week, we pick up wherever they have left off, and we continue the build. There's always one project manager who's on site, a building manager, and very often this has been a female for our Women's Build. There are many women involved in construction work, and some have their own construction business. And so we have had the help of those women, and they do guide us how to lay every brick or carry every door, whatever it is. They do guide the people along, and they give individual instruction. So this person does get involved, making sure that everything is done well. We do have various ages. Mostly we have young people from schools that like to be a part. Ages of 20 and 40 would be the next group. Sometimes there are older people that have had some experience, with their own house doing some building. And sometimes women will call and say, well, can I bring my husband? And we always say that if he is used to and can take orders from a woman, then he can come. And we've had men that come and do very well. Maybe they have some experience, and yet they have to be able to do it the way it's being done at that site. This is the first year that we have two-story structure. Generally, it's been a one-story with a basement. Usually it's 3 bedrooms, living room, kitchen, 1 bathroom, and a basement. So very often it's going to be single parents who have a couple children, trying to give them a better start in life. And if we get a mother with 2 or 3 youngsters, then somehow by living in a better house, a better neighborhood, probably it's going to be a better school system for them, maybe a good bus service. You just hope all those things kind of pull together.
I was really just sort of overwhelmed with all of it coming together at home, the people that helped me build my home. It was just overwhelming for me. I was really in shock, surprised. It was just surprising and, scary and happy. I spread the news, and I do tell people, women or men that may need housing, I do tell them, I'm tired of living with relatives. And I'll say, well, I got my home through Habitat, and, they build these homes, and it's a start home. My responsibility is to add anything that I want that'll help my home grow to be better is on me. It's not for me to go and call Habitat, oh, Habitat, I need a banister out there. That's my responsibility. This is my starter home. This is where I should flourish. I wanted a house, and I wanted my own. And when Habitat came along, that just made it all the better. My children, they love it. We got the yard. They got the yard out there, and then I love doing yard work. So, making sure things around me is presentable. Not just for other people, but for me. I like to come up, drive up, and see my house. Say, wow, I think my house is the best house on the street. So that's a challenge for me, and it's just worthwhile.
One of the ways that we could help these families was to assign a family partner, somebody who would work with the families, help them to understand what the agreement was between them and Habitat for Humanity Women's Build. This agreement meant that they had to put in sweat equity. They had to help build the house. Perhaps if they had children that could help, or brothers or sisters, the family would help build the house. The family partner was their cheerleader, help them at whatever problems would come along. That person was there to help them always keep focused on this is the agreement, and this is what we're all helping you with.
We're so close with our family, and I've been a family partner for quite a while. I'm the family partner here at this home. And for a whole year, we work with the family. We find out what the needs are, and during Christmas, we take them to the food pantry, and we help them in any way we can.
Loving our neighbor involves actions that are not always easy, but the joys and satisfaction that come from helping others are immeasurable. Sister Mary Dietz, a school sister of Notre Dame, interviewed people who volunteered time and energy for some of the women's builds. They bring us some interesting insights into the unique character of this build and share what is really involved in this effort.
Thy kingdom come. We've been praying that for almost 2,000 years. Each of us has a role in ushering it in. Women volunteering their time, applying skills that they never thought they ever knew, building houses, building the kingdom. Come with me. I'll introduce you to some of them. I was speaking with Sister Jeanene Yackey, who is sister of St. Joseph of Carondelet. Sister Jeanene, you've been with Women Build for a few years now. What draws you to that?
Well, most of all, it's to carry our charism, which is, as we all have, a preferential option for the poor. And part of our charism, the CSJ charism, is to care for the dear neighbor. So I'm working with the dear neighbor and trying to help the dear neighbor. And also, we were founded to supply whatever needs needed to be covered. In fact, they used to tell us to divide the city and then carry out the work in whatever the part of the city was assigned to you. So I divided up this part of the city, so I'm working here with Women's Build.
Just like some houses are sponsored by Episcopal churches, and that means that that group raises the money and organizes the volunteers to build the house. Women's Build is another group that raises its money and builds its house, and this is, behind me, is the fifth house we built in 4 years.
Steve, what's it like to be working with the women?
It's wonderful. My experience here and going into my 6th year has been nothing but pleasant. And the women who lead the crews here are patient and good teachers, and I've learned so much. It's been a real value in my life around the house, too.
There's actually a huge difference between a professional build and a habitat build, only because we're not here to make money. Money is not an issue to us. We don't think, I mean, we have to raise the funds for the house, of course, but beyond that, money's not an issue. Whenever it's your job every day, you know, the bottom line is the issue. So that completely changes it for you. It makes it a whole different thing. And then you also have people out here who are volunteering their time from, you know, it's their time, they don't get paid for it. Everything they do is from their heart. They want to do this and they want to help. So it's really difficult to compare it because there's no comparison. Habitat is so much better than, you know, your commercial everyday build type stuff. But that's really the difference. It's still a house that's built. It's built per code. You know, we get inspections. We have to go through everything that any home builder has to go through in St. Louis. We have to go through the same thing.
What are some of the requirements that Habitat for Humanity requires of those who will be homeowners?
Well, it's for the first-time buyers, and you have to do your own, 450 hours of your working on your own home for your down payment.
3 of the women working on today's house come to us from Narings High School. Emily, Sharon, and Emily, all 3 of them are seniors. And why did you choose to do your senior project as building a house?
Because usually everyone's working with people like in daycares or something, and I figured it would be something really new and different if I actually did hands-on activities and actually learning how to build a house.
Now, this whole house is being built primarily by women. What does that mean to you?
Our school's pretty much theme is empowered women, so we kind of hear that every day we go to school, that women can do whatever they want.
What have you learned about God and God working, since you in this are kind of his hands and feet?
Seeing God in everyone else, seeing him in the people that are willing to come out here and help every day, seeing him in the people that are only able to come once a day, and everyone giving their gifts just to build a house for someone they don't know.
Thank you for watching our program today. We are all a part of this nation, and each one of us is called to contribute to its greatness. For each link in the human chain to be strengthened, much effort and care are required not only for ourselves, but for others as well. We are about so much more than building a reputation or an image, a house or a nation. Together, we are building a kingdom. Putting God first in our lives each day will help us to contribute to the building of that heavenly kingdom. If we can imagine it, we can do it. Join us again next week for more good news in our neighborhood.
Since 1973, I've been involved in mural painting throughout the St. Louis metropolitan area, and my work has also taken me to other places in the country. The people who were running the Ruth Porter Community Center asked us if we could do a mural in honor of her. So working with about 20 students from the Visual and Performing Arts High School, I took them through the whole process of mural painting, the history of mural painting from cave paintings all the way through to the present. Mural making, as I saw it, was looking at the building, you know, what's the shape of the building, what direction does it face, learning about the history of it. What are the kind of people that are living there that are going to see this every day? You know, make it relevant to them. We want the community to own the mural. We want them to feel like, well, it was always here. When was it not here? In this particular mural, it was tall enough that we had to erect scaffolding across the whole wall. It took about 2 weeks to paint it, and it was high school students, so it was a lot of good on-the-job training for these kids. They're probably now like in their 30s, these kids, early 30s. I have no idea what any of them are doing, but I think that this kind of experience, working really hard on a public monument, getting paint literally all over their hands, having their hands on that wall, it has to have been an important time in their life.